The distinctive tick of grandfather's antique clock punctuated the silence as I entered my childhood home, each metallic click marking the precise moment my family planned to steal my inheritance. 7 days since we'd buried Walter Alden. 14 days until the official reading of his will. 21 days until Alden Supply Company would face its first board meeting without my grandfather at the helm. My navy blazer felt like armor as I stepped into the formal living room, where 5 pairs of eyes tracked my movement. The afternoon sun slanted through Venetian blinds, casting prison bar shadows across faces I'd known all my life but suddenly couldn't recognize. Claire. My mother, Denise, raised her wineglass in greeting. At 2 in the afternoon, the crystal stemware caught the light like a warning signal. Her highlighted hair was fresh from the salon, her designer outfit carefully chosen for this ambush. We were beginning to think you wouldn't come. Traffic. I remained standing while they lounged on the inherited furniture. Antiques grandfather had given them piece by piece over the years, watching them slowly strip his house bare. My half-sister Laura barely glanced up from her phone, while Ben shifted uncomfortably in the corner armchair looking anywhere but at me. Ron, my stepfather, gestured to the 2 men in suits arranging papers on the coffee table. These gentlemen are financial advisors. They're here to help us resolve this situation amicably. His golf tan highlighted the smug smile I'd grown to detest. The Rolex on his wrist, another of grandfather's gifts, caught the light as he reached for his water glass. You mean they're lawyers, I said, noting their briefcases and predatory postures. Here to help you contest the will. Don't be difficult, Claire. My mother's voice carried that familiar note of practiced patience. You think Walter left you everything because you're special? He was a spiteful old man who wanted to punish me through you. My fingers found grandfather's pocket watch in my blazer pocket, the one he'd given me on my 18th birthday. Its weight anchored me as my mother continued, each word precisely aimed. All those Saturday mornings he spent with you at the stores, teaching you the business. That wasn't love, Claire. That was revenge against me for remarrying. She took another sip of wine. For choosing happiness over his controlling ways. Ron nodded, as if my mother had made a particularly astute observation. Family means sharing, Claire. Or did Walter not teach you that? The grandfather clock marked another minute of my silence. I studied the room's familiar geography. The antique secretary desk where I'd done homework. The corner where grandfather's leather chair used to sit before Denise convinced him to upgrade the living room. Now everything matched, coordinated within an inch of its life, all personality stripped away. We've drawn up a very generous arrangement, one of the lawyers said, sliding papers across the coffee table. A voluntary redistribution that ensures everyone benefits appropriately from Walter's estate. I didn't move to take the documents. Appropriate according to whom? Oh, for heaven's sake. My mother stood, swaying slightly. You're 31 years old, Claire. You can't possibly run a company with 14 locations across 4 states. The responsible thing is to liquidate and distribute the assets fairly. Fairly. The word tasted bitter. Like when you intercepted grandfather's checks for my college tuition? Or when you convinced him to sell his lake house to pay for Laura's medical expenses that mysteriously coincided with your kitchen remodel. That's ancient history, Ron cut in smoothly. We're talking about the future. About family, taking care of family. Ben finally looked up, his expression torn between loyalty to our mother and something that might have been respect for me. Laura's fingers had stilled on her phone screen, though she still wouldn't meet my eyes. I touched the pocket watch again, remembering grandfather's words when he gave it to me. Time reveals character, Claire. Remember that. Its steady tick had guided my childhood studies, my work ethic, my determination to earn everything I received. My mother must have noticed the gesture. That watch should be mine. It was my father's. No, I met her gaze directly. It was my grandfather's, and he gave it to me because he knew I'd understand its value beyond the price tag. This isn't about some sentimental trinket, Ron snapped. This is about millions in assets that should be shared among blood relatives. Grandfather built something that matters, I said quietly, still holding my mother's increasingly hostile stare. I won't let you strip it for parts. The lawyers exchanged glances, clearly sensing their carefully orchestrated intervention crumbling. One began gathering his papers, while the other checked his watch. Sign the agreement, Claire, my mother said, her voice hardening. Or we'll tie this up in court for years. You'll spend every penny defending yourself. I smiled then, thinking of the documentation safely stored with my own lawyer. 7 years of bank statements, emails, recorded conversations, a carefully maintained record of every manipulation, every diverted dollar, every betrayal. I had no idea, I said, turning toward the door, that your ambush would be the last favor my family ever did for me. What's that supposed to mean? Ron demanded. The grandfather clock struck 3, its chimes echoing through the suddenly silent room. I paused in the doorway, remembering all the times I'd stood there as a child, watching my mother slowly dismantle everything my grandfather built. It means I learned from the best, I said, about the importance of keeping receipts. I walked out of my childhood home, leaving them with their lawyers and their plans and their afternoon wine. The spring air felt clean in my lungs, washing away decades of compromise. 7 days since we'd buried Walter Alden, 14 days until the reading of his will. 21 days until I would take my place at the head of the conference table, protecting what he'd spent his life building. The pocket watch ticked steadily in my blazer pocket, marking each step toward the future he'd prepared me for. Time reveals character, indeed. 4 days later, at 1:17 a.m., while the rest of the city slept, I spread sheets of papers across my dining table like playing cards in a high-stakes game. The ceiling fan clicked above me, creating shadows that danced across Walter's journal's leather-bound testimonies of years of financial manipulation. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each entry in my grandfather's precise handwriting. The apartment felt too quiet, too small for the magnitude of what I was discovering. The 15th of June, 2019, Denise called requesting $4,500 for Ben's orthodontia. Sent check. Later discovered through Dr. Winters that actual cost was $1,700. Difference unaccounted for. The 3rd of August, 2020. Paid $12,000 for Lara's educational trip to Europe. Instagram photos show her at beach resorts, no museums or universities mentioned. Entry after entry documented the slow bleeding of my grandfather's generosity. I pushed my hair back from my face and reached for my lukewarm coffee, the bitter taste matching the revelations before me. The memory surfaced like a bruise pressed too hard. I was 18, standing in the kitchen of the home I'd just left. Walter sat at the counter, glasses perched on his nose, checkbook open. "I want to pay your tuition, Claire. Stanford accepted you on merit. Let me handle the cost." Before I could answer, Denise swept in, her hand closing over Walter's checkbook. "We have medical bills, Claire. Ben might need braces. Your loans will build character." Her voice honey, sweet but eyes warning. Walter's face fell, but he nodded. I watched my future compress into something smaller, dimmer. 4 years later, I worked at Bookmark Haven between classes at the State College. Walter visited on a Tuesday, browsing poetry books I knew he didn't read. "Don't tell your mother," he whispered, slipping me an envelope as he purchased a Frost collection. Inside, $2,000 cash. I cried in the break room, clutching money that wouldn't change my path but meant everything because of who gave it. Back to the present, my calculator glowed in the dim light of my apartment as I tallied the documented loans and gifts that had vanished into Denise's lifestyle. The final number made me sit back. $287,435. I caught my reflection in the window hair pulled back in a messy knot, shadows under my eyes. Is this really where 31 years had led? A woman being asked to sign away her inheritance to people who never appreciated Walter's wisdom or work ethic? The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed Mark. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "They're planning to liquidate everything," I said without preamble. 14 stores, 3 warehouses, all for vacation homes and credit card debt. "What did Julie say?" Mark asked, referring to my attorney. I sighed, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the window. "That Walter's will is solid, but they'll contest it. Claim undue influence. It could drag out for years." "How much are we talking about?" "Around $3.7 million in assets." The number still felt unreal on my tongue. But it's not just money, Mark, it's people's livelihoods. Walter built something that matters. Silence stretched between us, filled with the unasked question, was it worth the fight? 3 days, I murmured. That's how long until they expect me to sign their voluntary redistribution agreement. After hanging up, I paced the length of my apartment, the hardwood cool beneath my bare feet. The clock on the wall, a housewarming gift from Walter, ticked steadily, the sound amplified in the night quiet. My fingers hovered over Hank Barlow's contact, Walter's best friend for 40 years. It was nearly midnight, too late to call anyone, especially a 78-year-old man. I called anyway. "I've been waiting for this call," Hank answered, no trace of sleep in his voice. He knew they'd come after it. "Did he tell you what to do?" "Better. He left instructions. And Claire..." Hank paused. "He left a letter confirming everything, handwritten, dated, witnessed by me and his doctor, stating precisely why he left the business to you and not Denise." My breath caught. "Why didn't you mention this at the funeral?" "Walter was specific. Said you'd face pressure to cave immediately. Said I should wait until you called me so I'd know you were fighting, not surrendering." By dawn, I'd gone from feeling cornered to feeling certain. Walter hadn't just left me asset, she'd left me a responsibility. The sun crept through my blinds, illuminating the scattered papers, the empty coffee mug, the decision solidifying in my chest. I slipped Walter's pocket watch from my nightstand and traced the engraving. "Time reveals character." My grandfather had spent decades watching his daughter's true nature emerge. He'd made his choice accordingly. And now so would I. 48 hours before the family's deadline, sunlight filters through the half-drawn blinds in Julie McRae's downtown law office, casting striped shadows across the polished mahogany table. The air smells faintly of lemon furniture polish and old leather-bound law books. Julie's mechanical pencil clicks rhythmically as she takes notes, the sound punctuating the silence between us. Her silver-rimmed glasses catch the light when she looks up. "It's airtight," she says, tapping Walter's will with one manicured fingernail. "Your grandfather was of sound mind and body. Their claims of undue influence won't stand." I smooth my skirt over my knees, trying to quiet the flutter of butterflies in my stomach. They're not thinking legally, they're thinking emotionally that family trumps everything else. "Including Walter's wishes?" Julie arches one eyebrow. "Especially those." I open my portfolio, spreading out the photocopied pages of Walter's journals. "Look here. October 2020. Denise asked for $40,000 for what she called Ben's college fund. 3 months later, Ron joined the Willowbrook Country Club. Initiation fee? $39,000. Julie lets out a low whistle. "And Walter knew?" "He found out. Started keeping records after that." I tap a bank statement. Every dollar, every lie, meticulously documented. Julie pages through the evidence, her pencil clicking faster now. "This is excellent. Establishes a pattern of financial manipulation." I check the time. 48 hours until my mother expects me to surrender what Walter entrusted to me. 48 hours to prepare for the fight of my life. A knock at the door interrupts my thoughts. Julie's assistant pokes her head in. "Mr. Barlow is here." Hank Barlow enters, his tall frame slightly stooped with age but his blue eyes as sharp as ever beneath bushy white eyebrows. He carries a worn leather portfolio, the same one I've seen tucked under his arm at countless board meetings. "Claire," he says, voice gruff with emotion as he takes my hand in both of his. His skin feels like parchment over strong bones. "Thank you for coming, Hank." He settles into the chair beside me, placing the portfolio on the table. "Walter knew this was coming. Been preparing for it since your mother refinanced her house the second time." "That was 3 years ago," I say, stunned. Hank nods, his weathered face solemn. "Your grandfather played the long game. Always did." He unzips the portfolio and removes a sealed envelope, cream-colored and weighty. "He asked me to give you this if things got ugly. Said you'd know when to use it." The envelope feels warm in my hands, as if it carries some of Walter's life force within its fibers. I trace my finger over my name written in his precise, architectural handwriting. "There's something else you should know," Hank says, lowering his voice. 6 months ago, when Walter's prognosis worsened, I overheard Ron on his phone in the hospital parking lot. He was talking about a deposit on a beach house in Naples. Said the full payment would be coming soon. His eyes meet mine. I told Walter that same day. My stomach twists. They were planning this while he was dying. Planning and celebrating, Hank confirms, his jaw tight. Julie stands, smoothing her charcoal pencil skirt. "Let's organize this chronologically. We need to create a narrative the family can't dismantle." For the next 2 hours, we build my defense, document by document. Walter's journal entries, bank statements, phone records showing every call between us over 3 years. The picture that emerges isn't just of Walter's trust in me, but of the systematic way my mother and Ron had treated his generosity as an entitlement. When we finish, my eyes burn from focus and held back tears. I gather my papers, nearly leaving Walter's pocket watch on Julie's desk. She notices, picking it up and pressing it into my palm. "You might need this tomorrow. Reminders of why we fight matter." The gold is warm against my skin, its weight familiar. I check the time, 5:17 p.m. Still works perfectly, unlike my family relationships. Julie doesn't smile at my weak joke. Instead, she squeezes my shoulder. "Claire, what happens tomorrow isn't just about money." "I know that." "Do you?" Her eyes hold mine. "Because Denise and Ron will make it about greed, yours, not theirs. They'll paint you as the selfish one, the ungrateful daughter. Are you prepared for that?" I turn the watch over, reading the inscription for the 1,000th time. "To Claire, time reveals character. With love, grandfather." Walter knew my character, I say quietly. "And tomorrow they'll learn it too." Hank clears his throat. "Walter used to say something about difficult choices. What was it now?" I slip the watch into my pocket. "The right path isn't marked by its ease, but by its truth." "That's it." Hank nods, satisfied. "That's exactly it." As we leave Julie's office, the late afternoon sun hits the glass buildings downtown, turning them to gold. 2 days later, I'll walk into my childhood home, not as the daughter they expect to manipulate, but as Walter's chosen successor, armed with truth. The envelope from Walter rests in my bag, still sealed. Some weapons are best revealed at the perfect moment, and timing, as my grandfather taught me, is everything. The morning of what my mother called our family resolution meeting dawns with a clarity that feels almost cruel. Through my apartment window, Richmond gleams under perfect blue skies while my stomach twists into knots that no amount of chamomile tea will untangle. Julie's legal folder sits on my kitchen counter, a fortress of documentation I've assembled. The potential costs of a prolonged legal battle scroll through my mind like ticker tape, $25,000 minimum if they contest, possibly climbing to 6 figures if it drags beyond a year. Money that would come from the very inheritance I'm fighting to protect. "This isn't just about money," I whisper to my empty kitchen, rehearsing the words I'll need to say aloud in hours. "This is about stewardship." I run my finger over Walter's journal entries, tabbed with color-coded markers. The blue ones mark every time Denise asked for money. The yellow ones document what those funds were supposedly for. The red ones, those are Walter's private notes about what the money actually purchased. A pattern spanning decades. The second problem hovers like a ghost. Ben and Laura. My half-siblings, caught between parent and grandparent loyalties. Once this line is drawn, will they ever stand on my side of it again? The thought of losing them fills me with a hollow ache that makes the financial calculations seem simple by comparison. My phone buzzes. "Julie, remember, you're not the villain here. You're the guardian." The third and most persistent problem rises, as I slip into my blazer. The voice that sounds suspiciously like my mother's. "Are you being as stubborn as I always claimed? As difficult? As selfish?" I silence it by sliding Walter's pocket watch into my jacket. The weight of it against my ribs feels like armor. Each step down the walkway to my childhood home echoes with more confidence than I feel. The concrete path I helped Walter pour when I was 16, my handprint preserved at the corner near his rose bushes. The brass knocker Denise installed when she remarried, replacing the simple bell Walter had chosen. 2 hours, I remind myself. 2 hours until I either walk out with my inheritance intact or fracture my family beyond repair. I hold Walter's pocket watch before entering, feeling its steady mechanical heartbeat against my palm. Not just an heirloom, but a reminder of his belief in me. I can almost hear him. "There will be pressure. Stand your ground." 2 hours later, at the former home, when I push open the door without knocking, a small rebellion, the living room tableau freezes like a photograph. Denise perched on the edge of the leather sofa, white wine already in hand despite the morning hour. Ron beside her, tanned fingers drumming on a stack of papers. Ben hunched in the corner armchair, eyes darting between faces. Laura on her phone, pretending disinterest while missing nothing. 2 men in charcoal suits I recognize from the country club's annual banquet, Martin Geller and William Price, financial advisors whose clients mysteriously develop sudden liquidity problems. Ron rises, radiating the false warmth he reserves for closing deals. "Claire, right on time. We've drawn up the papers." Simple 80/20th split. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. The family gets 80% to distribute appropriately. You retain 20 for your stewardship efforts. The last words drip with condescension. I don't sit. Instead, I place my leather portfolio on the coffee table, next to a crystal dish filled with the butterscotch candies Walter always kept for me. Before we start, I say, voice steadier than my pulse, when did you put the deposit on the house in Naples? Ron's face freezes. The question hangs in air suddenly thick as molasses. I don't know what. The 28th of January. I continue, placing my phone on the table. 3 days after Walter's oncologist told him the treatments weren't working. I recorded our last conversation, by the way. One-party consent is legal in this state. The silence that follows feels physical. If you've ever had to call out family manipulation when every face is turned against you, you know exactly how that silence felt like drowning in open air while everyone watches from the shore. Denise recovers first, lips tightening into a bloodless line. You think you're so clever. Always were your grandfather's little spy. This isn't about spying, I reply. It's about honoring intentions. One of the lawyers clears his throat. Perhaps we should review the documents we've prepared. No. The voice comes from the corner, surprising us all. Ben stands, his lanky frame unfolding from the chair. I want to hear what Claire has to say. Sit down, Benjamin, Denise hisses. But Ben moves to stand beside the piano where Walter taught him to play Heart and Soul when he was 7. Not quite on my side, but no longer lined up against me. I open Walter's leather portfolio, extracting the first set of documents with steady hands that belie my thundering heart. Let's discuss what grandfather actually wanted, I say, spreading the papers across the table like a hand of cards. I think you'll find his intentions were perfectly clear. The grandfather clock in the hallway begins to chime, marking the hour with the same steady rhythm Walter maintained in life. 10 chimes. Soon, this family would discover exactly what Walter Alden had entrusted to his granddaughter and why. 15 minutes into what should have been my surrender. Papers whisper across the mahogany dining table as I lay them out methodically. The documents form a map of deception that took me all night to arrange in the right order. My family watches with expressions shifting from smug certainty to growing unease. These are bank statements showing every dollar grandfather gave you over 7 years, I say, my voice steadier than my hands. $280,000 in total. Denise's perfectly highlighted hair doesn't move when she tosses her head. Walter helped us with expenses. That's what family does. Let's be specific about those expenses. I slide the next set of papers forward. This withdrawal of $12,000 was supposedly for Ben's braces. Ben's hand moves unconsciously to his straight teeth. Funny thing about orthodontia leaves a paper trail. I place a single receipt beside the statement. Your actual insurance copay was $800. The rest funded your Sedona spa retreat that same month. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticks, each sound like a tiny accusation. Ron leans forward, his Rolex catching the light. Claire, you're embarrassing yourself. Family finances are complicated. They certainly became complicated. I cut him off with another document. This check from grandfather, marked Lara's wisdom teeth, paid for your golf club membership. I look at Lara. Did you ever wonder why you couldn't get those impacted molars removed until college? Lara's phone slips from her fingers onto the table with a clatter. Mom said insurance wouldn't cover it. Insurance would have covered 60%. I pull out a highlighted insurance document. Grandfather gave them the full amount. Twice. The family lawyers exchange glances, shifting in their chairs. For 7 years, grandfather documented every misused dollar. I continue, placing a leather-bound journal in the center of the table. Now I have 14 minutes to make sure his final wishes are respected. I place Walter's pocket watch beside the journal. The gold case catches sunlight from the window, throwing fragments of light across the documents like spotlights. This watch represents what grandfather valued: precision, reliability, honesty. Denise reaches for it. That was my father's. I cover the watch with my palm, not roughly but firmly. No, he gave it to me on my 18th birthday. The same day you told him I didn't need college money because student loans would build character. Ben stands suddenly, chair legs scraping against hardwood. For a moment, I think he's leaving. Instead, he walks around the table and stands beside me. I want to see those statements, he says quietly. Denise's face flushes crimson. Benjamin, sit down, this is adult business. I'm 19, he says, old enough to know where my college fund went. Ron slams his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. Walter left a fortune. We're simply suggesting a fair division. Fair? The word tastes bitter. This isn't about money, it's about stewardship. Grandfather built something that employs 218 people across 4 states. Ron's lip curls. We could liquidate and all live very comfortably. That's exactly why he left it to me. My voice doesn't waver. He knew you'd strip it for parts. I reach into my briefcase for the final document, Hank's sealed envelope. The paper feels substantial between my fingers, like a lifeline. Grandfather left this with his oldest friend. I break the seal and unfold Walter's familiar handwriting. My throat tightens at the sight of it. I'll read it aloud. The room falls silent except for the clock's persistent ticking. To whom it may concern, I begin. I, Walter James Alden, being of sound mind, affirm that my decision to leave Alden Supply Company and the majority of my estate to my granddaughter Claire Elizabeth Alden is made with full awareness and deliberate intent. Denise makes a small choking sound. Claire understands that wealth brings responsibility, not just comfort. The others see only dollar signs where I see legacy. I have provided generously for my daughter Denise throughout her life, often to my regret, as these funds were frequently misappropriated. Ron stands now, his face mottled. This proves nothing. That old man was spiteful. If this letter is being read, I continue over him, then my concerns about attempts to contest my will have proven valid. The attached documentation of funds previously given to Denise and Ronald Harper should clarify my decision-making process. The lawyers exchange another glance before the older one begins packing his briefcase. Where are you going? Denise snaps. Mrs. Harper, he replies evenly. Our firm cannot continue representation in this matter given this new evidence. I can't help the small smile that touches my lips. You might want to issue a refund for today's services. The second lawyer stands, nodding curtly. We'll be in touch about our partial billing. They leave through the front door, letting in a brief gust of cool air that stirs the papers on the table like autumn leaves. This isn't over, Ron sputters, but his voice lacks conviction. Actually, it is. I gather Walter's pocket watch, running my thumb over the engraving on the back. Time reveals truth. Julie has copies of everything I've shown you today. She's prepared to defend the will in court if necessary. You'd drag your own family through court? Denise's voice rises an octave. You were planning to strip apart a company grandfather spent 50 years building. I meet her gaze directly. What would you call that? Ben picks up the bank statements, flipping through them with a furrowed brow. Mom, is this true? About my college fund? Lara moves closer, peering over his shoulder. And my dental surgery? Denise's perfectly composed facade cracks. For an instant, I glimpse something I've never seen before: fear. I begin gathering my documents, sliding them back into their folders with the same precision Walter taught me. Grandfather's will stands. Alden Supply Company remains intact. The trust provisions for Ben and Laura's education remain exactly as he specified in trust, not cash. Ron grabs his car keys from the table. This isn't over, Claire. Yes, I say quietly, it is. As I close my briefcase, I feel lighter than I have in weeks. The burden wasn't standing up to them, it was fearing I might not have the courage to do it. The grandfather clock strikes the hour, and for once, its sound feels like applause. As afternoon sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting prison bar shadows across the room, Denise slammed her palm against the dining table. The water glasses jumped, papers fluttered. He was my father. I deserved that money. Her voice shattered the momentary silence, high and strained. 30 years I put up with his lectures and disappointment, and this is what I get? Claire stood her ground. Walter's documents spread before her like a shield. Her mother's rage felt familiar, a storm she'd weathered her entire life. He built this company from nothing, Claire said, her voice steadier than her heartbeat. He wanted it preserved, not liquidated. Ron pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping against hardwood. His golf tan couldn't mask the red flush creeping up his neck. We'll fight this. You know that, right? He jabbed a finger toward Claire. Family trusts get overturned all the time. Undue influence. By whom? Claire kept her voice level. The man was sharp as a tack until the day he died. Ask anyone at the company. Lara sat frozen, mascara trailing down her cheeks. Her phone, usually an extension of her hand, lay forgotten on the table. I don't understand why he'd do this, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Ben moved closer to Claire, his lanky frame straightening with each step. I do. His voice cracked slightly, then firmed. Grandfather saw how you talked about the business, Mom. Like it was just ATM. Don't you dare take her side, Denise hissed, pointing at him with a trembling finger. After everything we've done for you. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 3, its deep bronze tones temporarily silencing everyone. Claire remembered Walter winding it every Sunday after dinner, his ritual as predictable as sunrise. For 3 heartbeats, Claire considered compromise. She pictured the family holidays that would never happen again, birthdays celebrated in separate homes, the permanent fracture that would follow today. Her throat tightened. Maybe a small percentage, just enough to keep peace. Her fingers found Walter's pocket watch in her blazer pocket. The smooth metal was warm against her skin. She traced the engraving on its back. Time reveals character. The moment of doubt vanished. I'm not selling the company, Claire said, straightening her shoulders. Not one store, not one warehouse. I'm honoring Walter's wishes. Ron snatched his car keys from the table. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. You planted this idea in his head, Denise accused, tears and fury battling in her voice. All those weekends you spent with him at the office while we were at the lake house. Claire almost laughed at the irony. You mean when you were remodeling the lake house with the money he gave you for Ben's college fund? That was a family decision. Denise's voice rose to a screech. No, Mom. That was your decision. Claire gathered Walter's papers with steady hands. Just like this was his decision. Ben stepped fully to Claire's side now, no longer hovering in the middle ground. I want to learn the business, he said quietly. Not sell it. Denise stared at him as if he'd transformed into a stranger before her eyes. After everything we've given you? What exactly did you give me? Ben's voice was barely audible. My first semester tuition came from pawning grandmother's jewelry. Claire bought my textbooks. Lara looked up, confusion clouding her tear-swollen eyes. She reached for the nearest document, pulling it closer. Her gaze flicked from line to line, recognition dawning. Is this the Bahamas trip from last winter? Claire nodded. Grandfather gave Mom money for your wisdom teeth surgery. I never had my wisdom teeth out. Lara looked at Denise, waiting for an explanation that didn't come. Ron's voice sliced through the thickening tension. This is ridiculous. We're not sitting here to be judged by a child who thinks she knows better than everyone else. I'm 31, Claire said quietly. Hardly a child. You've always thought you were special. Denise's voice dropped to something venomous and low. His precious little Claire who could do no wrong. The rest of us were just nuisances. The accusation stung, despite its familiar ring. Claire had heard variations of it her entire life. Walter's favoritism charge leveled whenever his guidance came with accountability. He loved all of us, Claire said. He just wanted different things for the company than you do. A sharp knock interrupted whatever Denise had been about to say. The front door opened, and Julie McRae stepped into the foyer, briefcase in hand. Her tailored suit and practical pumps looked out of place against the antique console table and family photos. I apologize for the intrusion, Julie said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. I was concerned when the meeting ran long. Perfect timing, Ron snarled. Bringing in reinforcements? Julie placed her briefcase on a side table and clicked it open. I've taken the liberty of preparing restraining orders if needed. She extracted a manila folder, her expression neutral but her eyes alert. Claire felt a surprising wave of calm. I don't think that will be necessary. We're just finishing up. Denise grabbed her purse, knuckles white around the strap. This isn't finished. Not by a long shot. Actually it is, Julie said. The will has been validated. The trust is ironclad. Any further harassment of Miss Alden will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. Lara stood, hesitating between her parents and siblings. Her gaze lingered on the documents spread across the table. Can I see the rest of these? She asked Claire softly. Denise made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Traitors. My own children. Mom, Lara began. Don't. Denise raised a hand. Just don't. Ron pulled Denise toward the door. We're wasting our time here, the lawyers will handle this now. As they moved toward the exit, Julie stepped aside, her expression professionally blank. Family meetings, she murmured to Claire. Always so heartwarming. The door slammed behind Denise and Ron with enough force to rattle the crystal chandelier. The sound echoed through the house like a final punctuation mark. Ben released a shaky breath. That went well. Despite everything, Claire felt her lips twitch. About as well as could be expected. Lara stood awkwardly between the dining room and foyer, tear tracks drying on her cheeks. I didn't know about any of this, she whispered. I swear. Claire nodded. I believe you. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, measuring out seconds that felt both endless and fleeting. Through the window, Claire watched her mother and Ron climb into their Mercedes, arguing even as the car pulled away. What happens now? Ben asked. Claire looked at Walter's pocket watch in her palm, then back at her half-siblings, the fractured remains of what once passed for family. Now, she said, we rebuild. 3 weeks after the confrontation that redefined our family, I stand at the entrance to Alden Supply Company headquarters, my grandfather's business card still in my wallet like a talisman. The imposing brick building with its modest signage looks exactly as it has for 30 years, but everything else has changed. Miss Alden? The receptionist Marlene, according to her name, plagiarizes from her desk. The management team is waiting in the conference room. I nod, straightening the lapels of my burgundy blazer. Thank you. Walking through the main floor feels like a procession. Employees pause at their desks, eyes tracking my movement. Some offer tentative smiles, others whisper behind cupped hands. The weight of their uncertainty hangs heavy as I pass rows of desks where people have worked for years, some for decades. The fluorescent lights cast a sickly pallor over everything. Without thinking, I pause at a bank of windows with blinds drawn tight against the morning sun. My fingers find the cord, and I pull. Light floods the space, dust motes dancing in the sudden brilliance. 3 employees at nearby desks blink, adjusting to the change. Walter always said natural light was cheaper than electricity. I say to no one in particular. And better for morale. A gray-haired man in shirt sleeves looks up from his computer. He used to open these every morning. Nobody thought to start doing it after. I nod, understanding. Small rituals die with the people who created them. By the time I reach the conference room, I've opened every blind along the path. Behind me, a subtle transformation follows, not just light, but a quiet awakening. 14 people rise when I enter, a mixture of store managers and senior staff. Some faces I recognize from Walter's funeral. Others are strangers who know me only as the granddaughter who inherited everything. Please sit. I place my leather portfolio on the table, Walter's old one, refurbished with new brass fittings. I know you all have questions. Henry Blackwell, manager of the flagship store, clears his throat. Miss Alden. Claire, please. Claire, he tests the familiarity. We've heard rumors about liquidation, selling off properties. Those plans weren't mine. I meet his gaze directly. I'm not changing what works, I'm preserving it while we grow thoughtfully. The tension in the room doesn't evaporate, but it shifts. Shoulders lower fractionally. I've spent the last 3 weeks reviewing operations. Walter built something remarkable because he understood that supply chains are about relationships, not just logistics. I open the portfolio. We have 6 weeks until quarterly reports are due to all 14 store managers. That gives us time to address inventory gaps and staffing issues at the Roanoke and Charlottesville locations. A woman with steel gray hair and perfect posture speaks up. Your mother gave us the impression the business would be restructured. My mother doesn't speak for me or for Walter's legacy. The words come out sharper than intended, but I don't soften them with an apology. Are there other concerns I should address before we dive into operations? The conversation that follows feels like crossing a rickety bridge of tentative steps, testing each plank before trusting it with full weight. Questions about vendor contracts, employee benefits, expansion plans. I answer each with the assurance of someone who spent nights studying Walter's meticulous records. By the time we break 2 hours later, the air has changed. Not complete trust that will take longer, but the acrid scent of fear has dissipated. Back in Walter's office, now I sink into his leather chair. The room remains largely as he left it, though I've added a small collection of succulents on the windowsill and replaced his ancient computer with something manufactured in the current decade. A knock at the door interrupts my moment of quiet. Come in. Marion Westfield, Walter's executive assistant for 23 years, enters with a cardboard file box. Her silver bob swings as she places it on my desk. Found this in the storage room. Thought you might want to see it. The label reads simply, Claire's first year. I stare at Walter's handwriting, the precise capital letters in black marker. What is this? Marion's smile holds a touch of satisfaction. Walter started it about 4 years ago. Said someday you'd be sitting in that chair, and you'd need a roadmap. My fingers trace the label. He never said anything. He worried your mother would see it as him playing favorites. Marion straightens a picture frame on my desk. Between us, the board has known for years you were the succession plan. Walter made sure of it. Some just needed to see you in action. The revelation lands like a gentle wave, washing away lingering doubts. All those weekend visits to the warehouse as a child, the summer internship in college, the endless questions Walter asked about how I would handle theoretical business problems, they weren't just bonding. They were preparation. When Marion leaves, I open the box. Inside, dozens of labeled folders containing contacts for key vendors, notes on the personalities and preferences of major clients, contingency plans for supply chain disruptions, even a list of birthdays for every employee with more than 5 years at the company. At the bottom, a sealed envelope with my name. Inside, a single page in Walter's handwriting. Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've stood your ground. I never doubted you would. Remember that a business is just people agreeing to build something together. The true asset of Alden Supply isn't the inventory or the buildings it's trust. Guard it carefully. With pride, Walter. The phone rings, interrupting my moment with Walter's words. The caller ID shows my mother's number. 3 weeks of silence broken by an electronic chirp. I let it ring twice more before answering. Hello, Mom. Claire. Her voice sounds tight. We need to talk. We are talking. About Ben. You can't just take my son. I press my fingers against my temple. I didn't take anyone. You threw him out for supporting me. He's confused. Ron thinks. I'm not interested in what Ron thinks. I keep my voice level. Ben's welcome to stay with me as long as he needs. He's started classes at Richmond Community, and he's helping me reorganize the inventory system. Silence stretches between us, filled with 2 decades of things we've never said aloud. This isn't over, she finally says. It is for me. I hang up gently, not slamming the receiver. Later that evening, I find Ben at my kitchen table, Walter's first ledger book open beside his laptop. My apartment feels different with his presence livelier, despite his quiet nature. The spare bedroom now holds his hastily packed clothes and the guitar he's teaching himself to play. Find anything interesting? I ask, setting a mug of coffee near his elbow. He looks up, his features so much like mine, Walter's genetics expressing themselves a generation removed. He was meticulous, every penny accounted for from day one. That was Walter. I sit across from him. Sometimes I think the business was just an excuse to keep perfect records. Ben smiles, then grows serious. Mom called me too. And? I told her I'm staying here. He closes the ledger carefully. I never knew grandfather the way you did. I'd like to change that even if he's gone. I reach across the table, covering his hand with mine. Start with that ledger. That's where he started too. That night, after Ben has gone to bed, I sit at my dining room table reviewing applications for the Alden Legacy Fund Me First initiative as CEO. Walter never got around to creating the scholarship program for young entrepreneurs he'd talked about for years. Now it would become reality, bearing his name but shaped by my hands. The envelope that arrives in the morning carries Laura's handwriting. Inside, a card with 3 lines. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what was happening. Can we talk? The ambush my family planned became the very thing that freed me to become who Walter always knew I could be. Perhaps it might free the others too, if they choose a different path. I slip the card into my portfolio next to Walter's letter. Tomorrow's bridge to cross. Today, foundations to strengthen. Golden morning light spills across Walter's renovated office, catching dust motes dancing above the antique oak desk I couldn't bear to replace. 6 months after the inheritance battle that fractured my family, I stand at the window overlooking the main floor of Alden Supply Company headquarters. watching employees arrive with travel mugs and friendly greetings. The space breathes differently now. Walter's dark wood paneling gave way to bright walls and glass partitions, but his solid desk remains the heart of the room. My laptop sits open beside stacks of expansion proposals. The new Virginia Beach location launches next month, Raleigh the month after. You changed the lighting. Ben's voice startles me from the doorway. My half-brother wears a pressed button-down, his college textbooks tucked under one arm, looking nothing like the uncertain boy who fidgeted in the corner during our confrontation. Grandfather would have approved. The old fixtures gave him headaches. He just never admitted it. Ben crosses to the whiteboard where the Sustainable Materials Division proposal glows with possibility. His proposal. 3 months of research transformed into a business plan Walter would have applauded. The board meeting's at 2. Ben taps the edge of the board. Should I bring the sample materials or just the cost projections? Both. Walter always said numbers tell half the story. Physical evidence tells the rest. The mention of evidence sends my mind skittering back to that dining room table, documents spread like playing cards in a high-stakes game. The family's faces when they realized Walter had documented everything: Denise's spending, Ron's manipulations, the betrayal that finally broke what false loyalty remained. The grandfather clock in the lobby chimes 9, the sound floating up the stairwell. Not Walter's original that remains in the house. Ron and Denise were forced to sell to cover legal fees, but a similar model I found at an estate sale. The old mixed with the new, past supporting future. My phone buzzes against the desk. Denise's name appears on the screen. Subject: Truce. The email sits unopened for 3 heartbeats while my fingers hover, remembering every cruel word she spat during our last confrontation. You think Walter left you everything because you're special? He was a spiteful old man who wanted to punish me through you. I open it anyway. Claire. My therapist says I should start with accountability. So here it is. I was wrong. About everything. The money. Walter's intentions. You. She says entitlement is a disease that blinds you to what matters. I'm trying to see clearly now. Coffee sometime? Not asking for money. Not asking for forgiveness either. Just, maybe a relationship again someday. Mom. No manipulation. No veiled demands. Just 12 lines that cost her more than any check Walter ever wrote. Everything okay? Ben asks, noticing my stillness. Denise wants to meet. I set the phone down. Therapy apparently agrees with her. Ben leans against the desk, arms crossed. You going to? Maybe. Neutral ground. Just coffee. Want backup? I shake my head. Some conversations need to happen alone first. Through the window, I spot Lara entering the building, her hair shorter than when I last saw her. 3 weeks after our confrontation, she'd sent a card. I'm sorry. I didn't understand what was happening. Nothing more until last week when she asked if she could visit. The wall opposite Walter's desk now displays framed blueprints of each Alden supply location, from the original 1,978 storefront to the 2 new properties. Between them hangs a shadow box containing Walter's pocket watch, the glass catching sunlight in prismatic bursts. I step closer, reading the inscription we added beneath it. Time reveals character Walter Alden, 1940-2023. The woman reflected in the glass looks more like Walter than I'd ever noticed. The same determined set to the jaw, the same thoughtful eyes. Not just his granddaughter anymore, but his successor in every sense that mattered. My afternoon schedule shows a 3:00 meeting with the Alden Legacy Fund Committee. 30 days until we award the first scholarships to young entrepreneurs who remind me of Walter, determined, visionary, ethical to their bones. At sunset, I'll visit the cemetery with fresh daffodils, Walter's favorites. You know what's weird? Ben asks, breaking the silence. I keep expecting to feel angry about how everything turned out, but mostly I feel relieved. He straightens a picture frame on the desk. Like we're finally building something real instead of protecting something fake. The elevator chimes downstairs. Lara steps out, hesitating before heading toward the stairwell that leads to the office. The scholarship applications arrived this morning, I tell Ben. Thought we could review them together. I cleared my schedule after class. Ben pauses. Did you tell Lara she could come? I did. A knock at the open door. Lara stands with 3 coffee cups in a cardboard tray, uncertainty written across her face. I remembered how you take it. Black with 1 sugar. Thanks. I make room at the conference table near the window. We're reviewing scholarship applications this afternoon. The offer to learn is still open, if you're interested. Laura sets down the coffee tray, her fingers lingering on its edge. I'd like that. Outside, the parking lot fills with employees, customers, delivery trucks, the everyday rhythm of a business built on something more substantial than quick profits. Walter always said there's room for anyone willing to build rather than take. The ambush my family planned 6 months ago became the very thing that freed me to become who Walter always knew I could be. The woman who wouldn't sign away a legacy to people who saw only dollar signs where Walter saw responsibility. Sometimes protecting a legacy means standing alone for a while, but if it's built on something true, others eventually find their way back to it.